From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Well, here's my annual Memorial Day message. My motto around here is, if it needs to be said and it's not being said, I try to say it. And this is a message I hardly ever hear, if ever. So I feel obligated to remind us every Memorial Day. Yes, absolutely honor those who have passed, and particularly on this weekend, those who passed and who served, and especially those who died in combat. As an avowed peacenik, someone who hates war, I will never, ever make light of that service and of that sacrifice. Nothing but love and respect for those who died for their country. Which is why I find this holiday so deeply disturbing and annoying. Because I'll be damned if I allow people with an agenda to stand on the shoulders of real heroes. It's bad enough even in the best of times, but especially now, with this racist, jingoistic, warmongering regime. The incompetence, the callousness, the cartoonish buffoonery of the Orange Menace, and the tragic state of events that allows this monster to be in the role of Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. What a sad and tragic joke that is. And then to add to the insult, Secretary of War Crimes Pete Hegseth, the Christian nationalist, the incompetent part-time Fox News weekend host with his crusader tattoos, his reckless frat bro attitude, his callous commitment of war crimes. For them to claim Memorial Day in their service, to spit on the graves of fallen soldiers, to justify their own war crimes, their own racism, their own hatred, their own xenophobia. Made even worse this year because this menagerie of kooks, cranks, and clowns posing as leaders, as statesmen, have created this debacle in Iran. Yeah, I'm recording this on Sunday, so by the time you hear this, there may be some news on Operation Epic Failure. Iran's negotiating position hasn't budged. They want reparations. They want frozen assets released. They want to continue to charge a fee for unfettered passage through the Strait of Hormuz, something they never had before this ridiculous invasion. They're happy to make some vague statements about how, we don't want a nuclear weapon. They've been saying that all along. They'll agree only to some so-called memo of understanding about future negotiations regarding their nuclear program, which is, again, no improvement at all from pre-invasion. But now, because the Orange Menace is so desperate, there's a chance he could actually sign on to this and then just lie through his teeth and call it a victory. Which wouldn't be that difficult for him because he lies through his teeth every time he speaks. I got a head start this year on my irritation regarding Memorial Day. 2 weeks ago, Vice President J.D. Vance delivered the keynote address at the 45th Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service. And I feel the same way about police officers as I do about military personnel. I can't get into their heads. I don't know why they signed up. I assume the best, that they wanted to serve. They wanted to protect people. Sure, some of them did it because, they couldn't find any other good option. They needed the money. I'm sure some of them signed up because they liked the idea of having power over other people, getting to carry a gun. I'm sure there's a lot of that. But I can't know, so I assume the best of all of them. But these despicable disciples of the Orange Menace, Hegseth, Rubio, Vance, they wear this reverence for those who have been given violence as a tool. They're the only people who society has granted that right. Police officers and military personnel. You can shoot people. You can kill people. And these damned MAGA neo-Nazis just love that. And so at this Peace Officers Memorial, J.D. Vance does the whole Crimea River thing about police officers who have died on duty. And again, I give them nothing but the highest honor. He abuses them. He uses them. He exploits them. That's why I'm angry. And here's something that, people don't like to hear, but it's just the truth. Relative to other jobs, as far as being dangerous, police officer doesn't even come in the top 10, doesn't even come in the top 20. Loggers, aircraft pilots, people drilling for oil, gas, mining, roofers, garbage collectors. There's your top 5. Then it's iron workers, delivery drivers, farmers, and firefighters come in number 9. Linemen, the guys up fixing the power lines during the storms, they round out the top 10. Then you got crossing guards, crane operators, construction workers, landscapers, highway maintenance, cement masons, mechanics of several varieties, and there's your top 20. Grounds maintenance workers come in at number 21, and finally, police officers at number 22. So I'm not here to dishonor any police officer who died in the line of duty. I honor them. I'm not upset with them. I'm upset with these monsters in the orange regime. And of course, they're not alone. Anyone in the right-wing, violent, fascist ilk, and we've had plenty for decades, for centuries, yeah, they all stand on the shoulders of the fallen for their own dirty agenda. And you might wonder where military personnel fall on this list of the most dangerous jobs. Well, it's nowhere on the list. 1 or 2 deaths per 100,000 compared to cops at 14 per 100K. Compared to number 1 on the list, which was loggers, 111 fatal injuries per 100,000 workers. Cops, number 22 on the list, with 14. Same as maintenance workers. Same as mechanics. So, of course, during a hot war, if you're actually in combat, yeah, then those numbers are going to spike. But generally speaking, U.S. military, as far as being a dangerous job, doesn't even make the top 50. And again, let there be no confusion. I'm not dishonoring anybody's service. My anger is squarely aimed at the wealthy, smug, comfortable, flag-waving, jingoistic, send your sons but not mine, Epstein class, masters of war, who salivate over killing brown people 7,000 miles away and black and brown people right here at home. Oh, the tough talk. Maximum lethality. Screw these people. Over 3,000 killed in Lebanon over the last couple months. Over 13,000 injured. Over 1 million displaced. Over 3,500 killed in Iran. Over half of them civilians. So let's remember every Memorial Day, when we honor the dead, just exactly who is responsible for their deaths. Especially considering we haven't had a just war since Roosevelt. Especially considering the way we conduct so-called public safety in this country is the worst of all alternatives. There are 100 different proven methods that are more effective, less violent, less racist. There's violence intervention. There are alternatives to incarceration, problem-solving, restorative justice, accountability, preventative investment, issues of social justice, housing, mental health care. Dozens and dozens of proven methods, every one of them superior in every way to cops with guns and tasers and the power to use them, the power to kill. So all love and respect to those who died in service, to the families who lost them, and zero respect, nothing but disdain to the small and damaged and corrupt men who stand on their graves and exploit their memories to advance their own twisted idea of might and power. Hey, I got to point you again to someone I've recommended very recently, And I want to just add to that recommendation because I've been spending some time online with Mina Rae, Menarae. She's a fantastic commentator, speaks eloquently, deeply, knowledgeably about political theory, and she's really helping me. So I've self-identified now for many years as a social anarchist. The reason I settled on that label, and as I've said 100 times on this program, labels are always dangerous. Often they do more harm than good. But the reason I settled on that is because I believe strongly in a lateral power structure, no hierarchy. Not vertical power, lateral power. But the thing that Mina Rae is helping me to rediscover, or maybe even consider for the first time, socialism especially, but even anarchism, are still anchored in colonialism. Because at the center of Mina Rae's philosophy is decolonization. And I'm sure if you've thought about this or read about this at all, that's not simply a material political condition. It's a mindset, right? That's very often the way colonialism is discussed in theory. Colonization is a mindset. To decolonize not only means to change rules and laws, it means to change how you think about the world. She's really helping me to hone in on that. For many years, though I haven't brought it up often, I have believed very strongly in the land back movement. Return of land, return of sovereignty to indigenous peoples all around the world. That's something else Mina Rae points out. All the many common threads among indigenous people all around the world. We're not talking about just North America. We're not talking about just specific nations, tribes. So, as a social anarchist, I keep preaching about democracy and lateral power. But that ignores the fact that for tens of thousands of years, indigenous peoples have been self-governing and centered on the land. Humans don't rule over nature. The earth, all plants, all animals are relatives. That I also believe. I was influenced very strongly by the book Deep Ecology by Duvall and Sessions. Also by my own studies at university, where I studied Native American religion and philosophy. So Mina Rae is really helping me to rediscover that and to recenter that idea. I don't know if you guys ever heard my radio theater series, Scenes from a Perfect World. It's a, I think, 13-episode series about a guy and his dad and his son. So it's the dad, the son, and the grandpa, and various characters in and out of their lives. And it takes place 70 years in the future. So then much of the dialogue is grandpa explaining to the grandson about his day, which is our day. But it takes place 70 years in the future, when everything's fixed. And one of the things about the future that's now perfect is that most all positions in government are held by indigenous people. Not because they had to make a law requiring that. It's just that when they abolished money, which they did, of course, for a perfect world, everybody just started seeing the world more clearly. Without money, the world was instantly better. Education was better. The way we lived our lives. We were healthier. We were smarter. Everything was just so much better once we eliminated money. And shortly thereafter, everybody kind of decided, it really makes sense for indigenous people to be in those roles of government leaders. So the president, everybody in Congress, everybody on city council, the mayor, pretty much everybody was indigenous. That was my idea of a perfect world. It just seemed to make sense. And it made sense to the people living 70 years in the future. We're just a blip on the timeline. Indigenous people have been here for tens of thousands of years, and they have the knowledge. It matters. So it's been a real pleasure to, as I say, rediscover and recenter these ideas. And I'm really grateful to Mina Rae. Search her name or search Notorious BGP for Brown Girl Pride. Notorious BGP. All right. Stephen Colbert. had his final show. It was fine. I watched it. I don't remember the last time I actually watched his program. I see lots of clips almost every day on YouTube. I'll see something. So yeah, I've seen plenty of Colbert. And, hit or miss for me. I could say many good things about Colbert and his work. He's funny. He's smart. He's got good writers, good staff, good production. His satire is at times biting. I love his use of the camera frame, which I think he innovated. I've never really seen anyone do that before, where the camera stays static and he leaves the frame and then re-enters from the other side. And he plays with it visually, which I think is kind of brilliant. There are lots of things I didn't like about Colbert. His nightly show, the cold open, whenever I saw it, was never good. I can't remember one cold open that was remotely funny. I don't know what the deal was with the cold open. I think he's extremely self-indulgent. He does things that are just annoying. You know his segment, Meanwhile? The Meanwhile segment? He has an intro that is overly written. It goes on and on and on, and it doesn't get any laughs. It's very much self-oriented. It's not about the comedy. It's about showing off how clever and witty we can be. He thinks he can sing, which he can't. Note to all comedians, bad singing is not funny. And if you think you're a good singer, trust me, you're not. You're a comedian. If you were a good singer, you'd be a singer. On his finale, he sings with Elvis Costello. He sings with Paul McCartney. No, don't. Comedians, stop singing. I'm sorry, this is a pet peeve of mine. And then finally on Colbert, his wife, putting her on the show every other week. 1,000% self-indulgence. She's not a professional entertainer. And she's not funny and quirky and charming like Letterman's mom. Letterman knew what he was doing. Well, I'm getting way off topic here. These are some thoughts about Colbert as he leaves. Thanks, Stephen Colbert. You did a great job generally. But he was hit or miss. That's me wearing my TV critic hat. Of course, the bottom line, which I'm really here to talk about, is that he was limited in what he could do because money. This is a corporate show, after all. As much as he wants to criticize the regime, he's in a box. That's the real bottom line. He's supposed to be this great voice in opposition to the regime, but you can only go so far when you're a corporate show. And of course, the fact that the regime had him fired, well, I don't even know if I have to say anything about that. It's pretty clear that that is just not the country I want to live in. I wouldn't want a progressive president firing Gutfeld. That's not how the world ought to work. So even though I was just very guilty of my own self-indulgence, taking the time to do some criticism of Colbert, that's the bottom line. It's corporate. He shouldn't have been dropped for political reasons. That's an abomination against what this country ought to be. But don't kid yourself. He wasn't the voice of the people. From the minute he debuted, he did his best, but he was always a man in a box. Which brings me to Saturday Night Live. They had their season finale. All I see on my social media feed are haters. I haven't watched SNL in 20 years. Oh, you mean since you were a teenager? Yeah, everybody thinks the same thing. Sorry, but your take is not hot. Everybody thinks SNL was good only in the years while they were teenagers. If you were a teenager in the late 70s, oh, that's when they were great. If you were a teenager in the early 90s, oh, that's when they were great. No. SNL was always hit and miss. Some sketches were great, some sketches sucked. It was always a pretty rough mix all the way through from the beginning to now. With the exception, of course, in the 80s when Lorne Michaels left, the Ebersol years, Dick Ebersol was the producer. Eddie Murphy tried to save the show and had some great moments, but other than that, I'll give it to you then. So if you were a teenager between the years of 81 and 85, if you think those were the best years, well, you're just wrong. But there again, bottom line, money, profit. You're a corporate entity. You pushed it as far as you could. In many cases, you did a great job, but your corporate identity always made you timid. Hell, their portrayal of the Orange Menace makes him almost lovable. They just can't bring themselves to portraying him as the monster that he is, because they're in a box. And it's amazing they do the work they do, which is still often excellent. Haters, just shut up. Try it sometime. Try putting together an hour's worth of comedy every week. You don't know what you're talking about. I have no time for SNL haters. Get out of here. Now, this brings me to something that sounds unrelated, but I think it's very much related, and that's the Democratic Party. They're a disaster. And they recently released this, what they call the autopsy, a review of the last election, which parties do after every election. They put together some research and what did we do well, what did we do poorly, what can we learn? It's standard operation for political parties. Well, they commissioned this report and then they refused to release it for months. And everybody's after them to release it. And finally they do. Ken Martin, the head of the DNC. And now we understand why he didn't release it. Because it's an absolute mess. Filled with mistakes. Got everything wrong. If you remember the 2024 election, now it wasn't all that long ago. I'm sure you remember. Affordability was kind of important. Not really mentioned in the report. Voters were incensed about Israel, Gaza, genocide, especially anybody under 50. 0 mentions in the report. Nothing about how Joe Biden decided to leave the race at the last minute. Nothing about how Kamala Harris was handpicked, completely anti-democratic. Nothing about how she sucked as a candidate. Had no ideas, had no vision, had no clarity in her message, had no skills at all. None of this is in the report. It's just the same old corporate speak about messaging. Oh, the policies weren't the problem. So the Democratic Party and its autopsy, which I think is a hilarious name, that's what you do to a dead corpse. So it's very fitting. A disaster. And why? Why is it related to Colbert and SNL? Because they're in that same corporate box. They're censored. They're self-censored. This is all related, and it's all about money. It's all about the corporate structure. Everything that comes out of it is an ultimate failure. Conservatives always talk about a meritocracy. And here I want to align myself with the conservatives. I love the idea of a meritocracy. But we can never, ever have a real meritocracy when money and profit are at the center of everything, when the corporate model keeps everybody in a box. So think about it. Instead of a handful of white men ruling over the comedy world, Colbert, Lorne Michaels, Jimmy Kimmel, imagine a world where there's an improv comedy group in every neighborhood, in every city in America. It's just part of the community. It creates community. It creates a connection between art and audience. When we're free from the shackles of wage slavery, of money and profit driving up the cost of living, so that all we can do is work and consume. Imagine actually living a life. And my little improv comedy example is only one of 1,000 different community activities you might be involved in. There's something for everybody when we're free. And then, from that situation, let's go back to our improv comedy group right down the street, right in our neighborhood. The best will rise into regional groups and larger groups, national. And so in this world I'm envisioning, we'll still have nationally known comedians and musicians. They'll be big stars. They'll be the best of the best. I mean, from Johnny Carson on, even before, People talk about, oh, this great era when there was this shared community. We were all as a nation laughing at the same jokes at the same time. And that's such a great thing that now we've lost. We could have that. We could have that. Because local scenes will be rich in comedy, in music, in all forms of entertainment, in all forms of culture. When it's local and when it's free, the best of the best will rise in a true meritocracy. Wherever you live, in a big city, in a rural area, suburban, and I don't care, anywhere, everywhere. The only way to have a real meritocracy is without money, without profit. So we'll have the best of both worlds. We'll have the local community, and we can also have this best of the best when they rise to regional and national fame. And we'll have that shared experience as well. And those best won't be chosen because of their access to money. They won't have to seek permission from those who have the money and the power. Censorship will be destroyed. Even better, self-censorship will be destroyed. Free speech will be actually free. And again, take this concept to all human endeavors. When money and profit no longer dictate the use of AI, the impact on our environment, on medical care, on education, name anything, name any human endeavor you can imagine. It'll be better. Comedy will be better. Music will be better. Political parties will be better. Artists will be free to create. Public servants will be free to serve. The banishment of money and profit is entirely and completely practical. Money doesn't work anymore. Just like war doesn't work. When are we going to get this through our thick skulls? I'm not talking about some utopian ideas. I'm talking about sheer practicality. The financials just don't add up. Figuring out how to make a profit from late night comedy, from the news media, higher education, healthcare, how to get food from the farmer's field to your table. All of it. It doesn't work anymore. Relying on the old profit system will never, ever work again. At this point, it's a fact of life that we just have to embrace. There's that kind of cliched phrase of people suffering, psychologically suffering with mental health, when they say, I'm ready to be happy. That's where we are right now. We're sick in our minds with the very idea of money and profit and financials. We can't let go of this dependency. It's got a hold of our minds. And we have to say no. Let it go. I'm ready to be happy. All right. This and all episodes can be heard at the website, charlespurcell.com, or on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio in Milwaukee. Follow us on Blue Sky and Substack. Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. Thanks for listening. I love you. I'll see you out there.